The millionaire CEO's children hadn't spoken a word until the new housekeeper arrived. Before we start, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And at the end, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. Riley Carter never imagined her life would completely change the moment she rang the doorbell of a mansion in Miami Beach. Much less that she'd be hired by a millionaire CEO who looked like he'd swallowed ice for breakfast. The door opened, revealing a tall man in a perfectly tailored black suit, even though it was Saturday morning. Damian Torres had the coldest eyes she had ever seen, as if he were analyzing her every move through a mental spreadsheet. "You must be the 9 o'clock candidate," he said, not even bothering to greet her. "Riley Carter, and you must be the man who doesn't smile, not even in family photos." Damian stopped halfway down the marble staircase. His eyebrows lifted slightly, as if no one had dared talk to him that way in years. "Come in, we have a lot to discuss." The mansion was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to the endless ocean, and the smell of fresh coffee mixed with the salty breeze drifting in through the open doors. Riley followed Damian into a living room, where two blonde children played quietly in the corner. "Noah and Emma," he said, pointing to the 6-year-old twins. "They're reserved." Reserved was an understatement. The children didn't even look up from their toys as if they lived in their own little world. Riley's heart tightened. There was something deeply sad in that silence. "Let's go over the rules," Damian said, opening a folder filled with perfectly organized papers. "First, you don't replace their mother. Ever. Second, schedules are sacred. Third, no changes to their routine without my approval." Riley watched him closely, noticing how his fists clenched when he mentioned the children's mother. The pain there was real, hidden behind all that corporate coldness. "Fourth rule," he continued, not looking at her. "Zero emotional involvement. You take care of them, they follow the rules. Everyone keeps living their lives." That's when Riley couldn't hold back anymore. "Excuse me, but is there an open bar in this house? Because I'll need a mojito to get through this." The silence that followed was deafening. Damian stared at her as if she'd just spoken Martian. But then something unexpected happened. Noah let out a small giggle. Emma lifted her head for the first time and smiled. Within seconds, both children were laughing. Really laughing, in a way Riley hadn't seen kids laugh in a long time. "Mojito," Emma shouted, clapping her hands. "Daddy, she's funny," Noah said, tugging at Damian's suit pants. For the first time since she'd arrived, Riley saw something different on the CEO's face. The corners of his mouth twitched, as if fighting a smile that desperately wanted to appear. For a brief moment, his guard dropped, and she caught a glimpse of the man he'd been before pain took over everything. "If I just wanted to clean, I'd work at a car wash," Riley said, now that she had the kids' attention. "But it looks like you need someone who does more than mop floors." Damian cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "The children don't usually react like this to strangers. Maybe that's because I don't treat them like little robots programmed to follow a schedule." The tension in the room spiked instantly. Damian stepped closer, his dark eyes flashing with irritation. "Be careful what you say about my family." "Or what? You'll sue me for telling the truth?" The kid stopped laughing, sensing the tension. Riley realized she might have gone too far, but she wasn't backing down. There was something about this man that challenged her, that made her pulse race. Damian studied her in silence for several long seconds. Riley held his gaze, refusing to look away, even as her heart pounded wildly. "You start Monday," he finally said, his voice low. "But one wrong word and you'll have to explain to these two why the person who made them laugh for the first time in months is gone." "Touche." Damian closed the folder a little too forcefully. "Monday, 7 a.m., don't be late." As Riley turned to leave, Noah ran up to her. "Are you really coming back?" Riley knelt down to his level and gently touched his shoulder. "I promise. And next time, I'll bring ingredients for a real mojito, kid version, of course." Emma clapped again, and even Noah gave a shy smile. As Riley passed Damian at the door, she whispered just loud enough for him to hear, "Your kids are amazing. Too bad you forgot that." Damian stood at the doorway, watching her walk down the mansion steps. There was something different about that woman, something that stirred feelings he hadn't felt in years. And that scared him more than any business meeting ever could. That night, while putting the kids to bed, Noah asked a question that left him speechless. "Dad, why does Riley make us laugh and you always look sad?" Damien turned off the bedroom lights without answering, but for the first time in months, he caught himself smiling in the dark, remembering that mojito comment. Riley Carter had just turned his perfectly organized life upside down. And the worst part? He couldn't wait for Monday to come. Monday came faster than Riley expected, but not as fast as the scolding she was about to get. In less than 2 hours of work, she had already broken at least 3 rules from Damien Torres's survival manual. It all started when Noah asked if he could touch the beach sand that was literally right outside the house. Riley looked at the turquoise blue ocean, then at the pale kids who looked like ghosts, and made the most obvious decision in the world. "Of course you can. Grab the sunscreen." 20 minutes later, Noah and Emma were running through the sand like they'd just found buried treasure. The sound of their laughter mixed with the waves, creating a kind of music the mansion hadn't heard in a long time. Riley watched from a distance, putting sunscreen on herself, when a dark shadow appeared beside her. "Can I know what on earth you think you're doing?" Damien's voice was cold enough to make the sea breeze feel warm. He was wearing a full suit, looking completely out of place in that tropical paradise. "What's the matter? Rich people afraid of sand?" Riley shot back without even turning around, watching Emma build her first sandcastle. "I'm afraid of negligence lawsuits," he replied, yanking off his jacket. "They could get hurt, get sunburned, or they could just be normal kids for once." The silence that followed was tense. Damien looked at his children, who were so absorbed in their game they hadn't even noticed him. Noah was showing Emma how to make little sandballs, both of them covered head to toe. "Got it? Sand is off limits, and the sun too, or is that pushing it?" Riley went on, rubbing sunscreen on her legs, calm as ever. "It's not about forbidding, it's about protecting." "Protecting them from what? Being happy?" The question hit Damien like a punch. He stood there, watching Emma squeal every time a wave reached her feet. "You don't understand," he muttered, but his voice had lost its strength. "I understand more than you think," Riley said, standing up to face him. "I know you're trying to protect them from everything that could go wrong, but you're also protecting them from everything that could go right." Damien opened his mouth to reply, but Noah came running toward them, holding a shell. "Dad, look what I found." Riley said, "It's a crab's house." "It's beautiful, son," Damien answered automatically, but his eyes stayed on Riley. Emma ran up next, soaked and laughing. "Daddy, come play with us. The water's warm." And that's when something inside Damien cracked. How long had it been since he'd seen his kids like this? Truly happy, without that quiet sadness in their eyes? "I need to get back to the office," he said, but didn't move. "Of course you do," Riley murmured, sitting back down in the sand. "Because the office is so much more important than this." Damien stood there for a few more minutes, torn between anger and something he couldn't name. Riley wasn't being disrespectful. She was being honest, and that bothered him more than any rule she'd broken. "1 hour," he finally said. "Then I want you all back inside." Riley smiled without looking at him. They laughed. That's already a win. Damien started walking back to the mansion, but halfway there, he stopped. He pulled out his phone and quietly took a picture of the kids playing. He couldn't help but notice how naturally Riley fit into the scene, as if she'd always been part of that family. Back in his office, he tried to focus on financial reports, but his eyes kept drifting toward the window. Down below, Riley had turned the beach into a treasure hunt, and the kids were running around like little explorers. His assistant, Margaret, came in with coffee and documents to sign. "The kids seem to be having a good time," she said, following his gaze. "They're off their routine," Damien replied, though it didn't sound like a complaint. "Sometimes routines need to be broken, Mr. Torres, especially when it's about healing small hearts." Damien looked at Margaret, surprised by her boldness. She'd been with the family long before the accident and knew them better than most. "Are you saying I'm wrong?" "I think you're scared, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes fear keeps us from seeing the miracles happening right in front of us." When Damien looked out the window again, Riley was sitting on the sand with a child on each side, telling a story that made them laugh until they couldn't breathe. For the first time in 2 years, he wondered if his strict rules were really protecting his kids, or just keeping them all trapped in a sadness that had gone on far too long. That night, during dinner, Emma asked a question that completely disarmed him. "Daddy, would Mommy like to see us playing on the beach?" Damien swallowed hard, feeling his eyes sting. "She would love that, Princess. Then can we play again tomorrow?" Damien looked at Riley, who was helping Noah cut his food, pretending not to hear the conversation. But he noticed the faint smile she was trying to hide. Why did that woman always have to be right? Riley had barely finished making breakfast when Damien walked into the kitchen with a folder under his arm, and that expression she knew all too well. It was the look of a man about to fire someone who believed he had every argument on his side. "We need to talk." Now. Riley kept stirring the scrambled eggs without turning around. "Good morning to you, too. Did you sleep well while planning how to get rid of me?" Damien stopped in the middle of the kitchen, clearly annoyed at being so easily read. "The kids have been too restless since yesterday." "That's not healthy." "Oh, sorry, I didn't know happiness was a contagious disease." "This isn't about happiness, it's about structure, about limits, about control." Riley cut him off, finally turning to face him. "You can say the word, it won't hurt you." The smell of paperwork and tension filled the kitchen. Damien opened the folder and pulled out a few documents, placing them on the marble counter a little too forcefully. "Your contract can be terminated at any time for breaking the established guidelines." Riley glanced at the papers and let out a laugh that had nothing funny about it. "Seriously, do you practice that scowl in the mirror?" "This isn't a joke, Riley. I agree. It's pathetic." That's when Noah and Emma appeared in the doorway, still in their pajamas, instantly sensing the tension in the air. "Daddy, why are you mad at Riley?" Emma asked, running to hide behind Riley's legs. "She didn't do anything wrong," Noah added, crossing his little arms in a protective stance that broke Riley's heart. Damien looked at his children, clearly not expecting that reaction. "Kids, go back to your room. The adults are talking." "No," Emma shouted, holding tighter to Riley's pants. "If Riley leaves, I'm going with her." "Emma," Damien began, but Noah interrupted. "We don't want another boring nanny. Riley is fun." Riley felt her heart tighten seeing those two little kids standing up for her. It had been a long time since anyone defended her, and ironically, it was two 6-year-olds. "Hey, you two?" She crouched down to their height. "How about you go brush your teeth while your dad and I finish our grown-up talk?" "You promise you're not leaving?" Emma asked, eyes full of tears. Riley looked at Damien over their heads. He was clearly shaken by his children's reaction, though still trying to keep his rigid posture. "I promise I'm not going anywhere without telling you first." The kids reluctantly left the kitchen, but not before Emma gave Riley a tight hug and Noah threw a defiant look at his father. Once they were alone, the silence was almost heavy. Riley leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So? You're really going to do this to them?" "This isn't about them, it's about you not following rules." "If you want a robot, buy an Alexa." Riley shot back, grabbing the folder and flipping through the papers. "Because I'm a person. And people think, feel, and sometimes make choices that don't fit neatly into a folder." Damien stepped closer, invading her personal space. "You have no idea what it's like to raise two kids alone. The fear, every second, that something might happen to them too." And there it was, the raw, unfiltered pain. Riley saw in his eyes the vulnerability he'd been hiding behind all those impossible rules. "You're right, I don't," she said softly. "But I know those kids are suffocating. And so are you. I'm protecting my family. You're building a golden prison." Damien closed his eyes, running his hands through his hair. When he opened them again, Riley saw something different there. Exhaustion, desperation, and maybe, just maybe, a little surrender. "What do you want from me?" Riley never imagined that a professional clown could cause as much drama as a control-obsessed millionaire CEO. But there she was, 2 hours before the twins' birthday party, getting the call every event planner dreads. "What do you mean you can't come?" she said into the phone, trying to stay calm as colorful balloons floated across the room. On the other end, a nasal voice explained something about food poisoning and being unable to perform. Riley hung up and looked around. 20 kids arriving in an hour, perfect decorations, the smell of chocolate cake in the air. and zero entertainment. Problem? Damien appeared in the doorway, flawless as always, though there was something different about his posture. Over the past 2 weeks, since the whole contract incident, he had been less grumpy. The clown canceled. Food poisoning. So what now? Riley looked at Noah and Emma, who were happily playing, unaware of the chaos about to hit. Then a crazy idea began to form in her mind. Improvising is my middle name, she muttered, mostly to herself. Riley, what are you thinking? But she was already running upstairs. 15 minutes later, she came down wearing the strangest mix of clothes. Emma's pink tutu skirt from her ballerina costume, one of Damien's dress shirts, borrowed without asking, a tie wrapped around her head like a headband, and mismatched striped socks she'd found in a drawer. Damien almost choked on his coffee. You... what? Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Riley the improvised clown, she said, taking a theatrical bow that made Noah and Emma burst out laughing. You're laughing? Make sure it's not an allergic reaction, she whispered to Damien as she walked past him. And that's how the most unexpected show that mansion had ever seen began. Riley turned the living room into a circus using nothing but creativity and whatever she could find around the house. Balloons became animals, napkins turned into magic tricks, even the houseplants came to life in her stories. As the children arrived, they were instantly swept up by Riley's contagious energy. She didn't have professional equipment, a rehearsed script, or the right costume. But she had something far more valuable: authenticity. Damien watched from the corner, leaning against the wall, completely mesmerized. There was something about the way Riley connected with the kids that stirred something deep in him. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just being herself. Now I need a brave assistant, Riley announced dramatically. Someone who's not afraid of fun. Every child raised their hand, shouting to be chosen. But Emma had another idea. Riley, call Daddy. No, 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 Damien said quickly, waving his hands and stepping back. I'm not part of the act. Oh, how scary, Riley teased with a mischievous smile. The great millionaire CEO is afraid to play. The crowd of kids started chanting, Noah's dad, until Damien had no choice but to give in. Just this once, he muttered, loosening his tie. Riley made up a game where Damien had to copy her movements while she told a story about a businessman who forgot how to smile. The audience was laughing nonstop. Even Damien began to relax, making silly faces that sent the kids into hysterics. But everything changed during the final magic trick. Riley was trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat, which was actually a salad bowl, when she tripped over her own feet and fell flat on the floor, knocking over half the set. For a second, there was total silence. Riley's face flushed with embarrassment. All those kids staring, waiting, and she had ruined everything. Then Noah started laughing. Then Emma. Within seconds, all the kids were laughing so hard they could barely breathe. She did it on purpose, one girl shouted. She's so funny. Riley looked around, still sitting on the floor, and realized something amazing. The kids weren't laughing at her. They were laughing with her. It didn't matter that everything had gone wrong. They were having the time of their lives. When she looked up, she found Damien watching her with an expression she'd never seen before. It wasn't annoyance or surprise. It was admiration. He started clapping slowly, and soon the entire room, kids and parents alike, joined in. They didn't need perfection, Riley whispered softly, still sitting on the floor. Just joy. But Damien heard her. And for the first time since losing his wife, he understood the difference between doing things right and doing things with love. After the guests left and the kids were tucked into bed, Riley was in the kitchen, cleaning up the last traces of the party. She was still wearing parts of her makeshift costume, with a few bits of confetti stuck in her hair. Thanks, Damien said, leaning against the doorway. For what? For saving the party. For making my kids laugh like that. He hesitated, for reminding me it's okay not to be perfect all the time. Riley smiled, pulling the tie off her head. That one was easy. You should see me trying to put furniture together with an instruction manual. They both laughed, and for a moment the kitchen felt wrapped in a quiet intimacy neither of them expected. Riley? Yes? You can keep the shirt? It looks better on you than it ever did on me. Riley felt her heart race. There was something in the way he said it, something in his eyes that didn't look away, that made the air leave her lungs. Damien, Good night, Riley. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving her alone with 1,000 questions and one unsettling certainty. Something had changed between them tonight. Something that couldn't be undone. And for the first time since she arrived at that house, she wondered if she was getting herself into something far more complicated than taking care of 2 kids. Actually, she was sure of it. The real question was she willing to risk her heart for a family that might never truly be hers? Riley should have known something was off when Damien invited her to dinner at one of the most elegant restaurants on Ocean Drive. Men like him didn't take the nanny to places where an appetizer cost more than her weekly paycheck, unless they had hidden motives or were about to drop bad news. She found out which one it was the moment a stunning woman walked up to their table with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Damien, darling." Her voice was sweet as poisoned honey. "What a lovely surprise to find you here." Riley felt Damien's body tense beside her. She didn't need an introduction to know who this woman was. The perfectly styled blonde hair, the dress worth more than a used car, and especially the way Damien's expression darkened instantly. "Veronica," he said, not getting up. "Didn't expect to see you." "I bet you didn't." Veronica's eyes traveled slowly from Riley's head to her shoes with a precision that could rival a medical scanner. "And you must be the helper." The scent of seafood and the soft Latin music in the background created a romantic atmosphere that clashed painfully with the tension at their table. "Riley Carter," she said politely, extending her hand. "I take care of Damien's children." "Oh, the nanny?" Veronica didn't shake her hand. "How interesting." "Veronica," Damien warned, his tone firm. "If you could—" "Oh no, darling, I won't interrupt your business dinner." She laughed, a crystal-clear poisonous sound. "Although I must admit, I'm curious what kind of business a millionaire CEO discusses with his nanny in such a romantic restaurant." Riley felt her face burn. People at nearby tables were starting to listen, and she could swear someone had their phone recording. "Actually," Veronica went on, clearly enjoying herself, "I'm impressed, Damien. 2 weeks and you're already expanding employee benefits?" "That's enough," Damien said, standing up. But Veronica wasn't done. "I'm sorry, dear," she said directly to Riley now. "I don't mean to be rude, but do you really believe you're anything more than a passing distraction? Because I've known Damien for years, and let me tell you, he has a very specific type when it comes to serious relationships." The silence that followed was deafening. Riley could feel every eye in the restaurant on her, waiting to see what she'd do. Veronica had just humiliated her in the most public way possible. For a second, Riley thought about standing up and walking out, but then she remembered something. She wasn't a victim. She was a fighter. "Someone get me a mojito, because that's the only way I'm getting through this," she said loudly, rising to her feet. A few people laughed nervously. Veronica frowned, clearly not expecting that. "You know what, Veronica?" Riley said, her voice steady and clear. "You're right about one thing. I am a distraction, but not a cheap one." More laughter rippled through the room. "I'm a distraction from your arrogance, from your pathetic need to control a man who's clearly moved on, and apparently, I'm such a good distraction that you felt the need to come here and try to put me down." Veronica's smile faltered. "A distraction? Only if it's from your arrogance," Riley finished, grabbing her purse. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to find a place where the music isn't interrupted by unnecessary drama." Riley started to step away from the table when she felt a firm hand on her arm. It was Damien. "Where do you think you're going?" "Home. Tonight has been embarrassing enough." "Sit, Damien. Please, sit." Riley hesitated, but something in his voice made her return to her chair. Damien turned to Veronica, who was still standing by the table like a cracked marble statue. "Veronica, you crossed a line." His voice was calm, but carried a cold edge that made Riley shiver. "Riley isn't my employee at a business dinner. She's my guest. And more importantly, she's a decent person, something you've clearly forgotten how to be." "Damien, I was just—" "You were being cruel and unnecessary, as usual." The entire restaurant had gone silent, watching the scene unfold like a live movie. "I suggest you go back to your table and let grown-ups finish their meal in peace." Veronica looked around, finally realizing she had an audience. Her face turned red, but she tried to keep her composure. "This conversation isn't over, Damien," she said through clenched teeth. "Oh, it's over," he replied. "It ended a long time ago." When Veronica finally walked away, Damien sat down and took Riley's hand across the table. "I'm sorry about that. You don't have to defend me." "Yes, I do," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "No one gets to talk to you like that. Especially not because of me." Riley looked at their intertwined hands. His skin was warm, steady, and there was something deeply intimate in that simple gesture. "Next time, give me a heads up if your ex is coming. I'd have worn higher heels," she said, trying to lighten the mood. Damien laughed, really laughed, and something shifted inside her chest. There won't be a next time, at least not with her. They finished dinner in relative peace, but Riley couldn't stop thinking about how Damien had stood up for her. It was the first time anyone had defended her like that, especially someone like him. When they got home, Damien walked her to her bedroom door. "Riley?" "Yes?" "Thank you for not running out when she showed up." "Where would I run? You drove me here." He smiled, but there was something more serious in his eyes. "You're much stronger than you think. And you're much kinder than you let people see." For a moment, they stood there in the hallway, very close, breathing the same air. Riley could smell his cologne and see the faint lines near his eyes. "Good night, Riley." "Good night, Damien." But when she closed the door, Riley leaned against it and took a deep breath. Because she knew Veronica wouldn't let this go. And worse, she knew her feelings for Damien had just become much more dangerous. Outside, Damien stood still for a few seconds, fighting the urge to knock on the door and say everything he was feeling. But he also knew Veronica wasn't done with them. And this time, she would aim for more than public humiliation. She would try to destroy Riley completely. Riley couldn't sleep, and apparently, neither could Damien. It was 2 a.m. when she found him on the terrace, standing by the railing, watching the waves shimmer under the full moon. He wasn't wearing his jacket or tie, just a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves and dress pants. His hair was messy, as if he'd run his hands through it too many times. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked softly, stepping beside him. "I thought you were asleep," he said without turning, though she caught a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Hard to sleep after being called a cheap distraction in public. Damien finally looked at her. Riley wore a simple cotton pajama set and was barefoot, but the moonlight on her face made his heart race. "You're not a distraction," he said, his voice lower than usual. "No? You're much worse than that." Riley frowned, puzzled. "You're a revolution," he continued, turning fully to face her. "Since you got here, you've turned my life upside down. My kids smile again. I smile again. And that terrifies me." The scent of the ocean mixed with her soft perfume, wrapping the night in something almost magical. Somewhere down the beach, a faint Latin song played. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because the last time I let myself be truly happy, I lost everything." There it was, the raw wound he'd been hiding behind all his rules and routines. Riley felt her heart break just a little. "Damien?" "She died in a car accident on her way back from a surprise party she'd planned for me," he said quickly, as if he needed to spit the poison out before it consumed him. "It was raining. If I hadn't asked her to come pick me up, you can't blame yourself for that." "Oh, I can. And I do. Every day." Riley took a step closer, close enough to feel the warmth coming from his body. "Do you really think she'd want you living like this? Trapped in a guilt that isn't yours?" "I don't even know what she'd want anymore." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "All I know is that when I look at you, I feel things I swore I'd never feel again." The silence that followed was charged with electricity. Riley could hear her own heartbeat, or maybe his. It was hard to tell where one ended and the other began when they were that close. "And what do you feel when you look at me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Damien took a step forward, closing the space between them completely. His hands found her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks with a tenderness that clashed with the intensity in his eyes. "I feel like maybe it's possible to be happy again. Damien, I feel like you make me want to be a better man, a better father." They were so close now that Riley could see the small lines around his eyes, the way his pupils widened in the dim light. "And I feel," he continued, his mouth just inches from hers, "that if I don't kiss you now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." "Then kiss me." It was as if the world stopped. Damien tilted his head, Riley closed her eyes, and for an endless second they hovered in that perfect moment between desire and fulfillment. Until a sleepy little voice broke the spell. "Dad? Are you out here?" They jumped apart like they'd been shocked. Noah stood in the doorway, holding his stuffed bear and rubbing his eyes. "I had a bad dream," he said, walking straight to Damien. Riley stepped back, trying to compose herself. Her heart was still racing, and she could swear her lips were tingling from the kiss that almost happened. "It's okay, buddy," Damien said, picking Noah up, though his eyes never left Riley. "What was the dream about?" "I dreamed that Riley went away and never came back." Riley felt the air leave her lungs. Children's innocence could be sharper than any adult's insight. "Riley's not going anywhere," Damien said, but it sounded more like a question meant for her. "Promise?" Noah asked, looking at Riley. "I promise, little one." "Your son has perfect timing," Riley murmured to Damien, trying to break the tension with humor. "He got that from his mother," Damien replied automatically, and instantly regretted it. The mood changed in a heartbeat. Mentioning his wife brought back all the reality they had managed to escape for a few fleeting minutes. "I should sue your family for romantic sabotage," Riley joked softly, but there was something different in her voice now. "Riley, you're not ready yet," she said gently, but with a certainty that hit him like an arrow. "And that's okay." "That's not." "It is, and it's perfectly fine." Damien wanted to argue, to explain that it wasn't about being ready. It was about fear. Fear of being happy. Fear of losing again. Fear that his feelings for Riley might betray his late wife's memory. But the words wouldn't come. "Good night, Damien. Good night, Noah." Riley walked back into the house, leaving father and son alone on the terrace. Damien stood there for a long time, Noah asleep in his arms, staring at the spot where she'd just been. After putting his son to bed, he went downstairs and sat at the piano he hadn't touched in 2 years. His fingers found the keys automatically, playing the soft melody that used to calm his mind. But this time, he wasn't thinking about the wife he'd lost. He was thinking about the woman he almost kissed, about how she made him feel alive again, and about the fear that came with it. Most of all, he was thinking about the question he didn't want to ask himself. What would happen if he actually let himself love Riley Carter? Upstairs, Riley lay in bed, listening to the piano. Each note echoed the rhythm of her heart, reminding her of what almost happened on the terrace. She had lied to Noah. She wasn't sure she could promise to stay forever, especially now that it no longer felt like just a job. It felt like emotional survival. And Veronica still hadn't made her next move. Riley found out that Veronica Vega wasn't just a bitter ex-girlfriend when she woke up and saw her own photo splashed across the front page of the Miami Herald with the headline, "Scammer Nanny Seduces Millionaire CEO." The revenge had officially begun. The smell of expensive perfume still lingered in Damien's luxurious office when Riley arrived for the emergency meeting. Camera flashes exploded outside the building, and she barely made it through the doors without being bombarded with questions. "Sit down," Damien said without looking at her, flipping through a pile of newspapers on his desk. Next to him sat Margaret, his assistant, and a man in a gray suit Riley had never seen before. "This is Marcus Webb, our attorney," Damien said formally, his voice strangely cold. Riley felt her stomach sink. When a millionaire CEO brings in a lawyer, it's rarely good news for the one being accused. "Riley." Marcus opened a folder. "I need to ask you a few questions about your personal finances." "My finances?" "The accusations are quite specific," he continued, adjusting his glasses. "They claim you manipulated situations to get close to the Torres family with the intent of committing financial fraud." Riley looked at Damien, searching for some sign of support, but he kept studying the papers as if she wasn't even there. "What kind of accusations?" Margaret cleared her throat awkwardly. "They say you researched the family online before your interview, that you deliberately planned your answers to make a specific impression on the children. And that," she hesitated, "that you intentionally seduced Mr. Torres to secure your position." The silence that followed was deadly. Riley felt as if she'd been slapped in the face. "If I were a scammer, I'd be doing a terrible job," she finally said, her voice steadier than she expected. "Because so far, I've only spent my own money buying things for the kids." Marcus jotted down some notes. You deny researching the family before your interview? Of course not. Anyone responsible does research before taking care of children. I wanted to make sure they were a safe family. And what about the claims that you manipulated the kids? Riley stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the marble floor. You want the truth? I love those kids. They laughed for the first time in months with me. They eat properly, they sleep better, and they're kids again. If that's manipulation, then I'm guilty. That's when Damien finally lifted his eyes from the papers. Riley, let me finish, she turned to the lawyer. Who made these accusations? Marcus exchanged a look with Damien. A source who prefers to remain anonymous but who knows the family well. Veronica. Riley said without hesitation. She never got over the breakup and decided to destroy me because her ex moved on. You have no proof of that, Marcus noted. And you have no proof that I'm a scammer. Yet here we are. Damien's phone rang. He answered quickly, but Riley could hear the irritated tone on the other end. I understand. Yes, sir. No, this won't affect the business. He hung up and ran a hand through his hair. The board, he explained to the lawyer. They want an emergency meeting. Riley felt her world collapse. She wasn't just a nanny being unfairly accused. She was now a PR problem that could hurt Damien's entire company. I resign, she said quickly. No, Damien stood. You're not going anywhere. Damien, this is affecting your business. To hell with the business. Margaret and Marcus exchanged surprised looks. Damien Torres never put anything above business. Mr. Torres, Marcus began. Perhaps it would be wiser to consider. Marcus, you work for me, right? Damien turned to him with a calmness that made Riley's skin prickle. Yes, sir. Then your job is to defend me. And to defend my family. Riley is part of my family. Riley's heart skipped a beat, but she tried to stay composed. I want you to investigate these accusations, trace where they came from, how they reached the press, and bring me solid proof. And if the accusations turn out to be true? Marcus asked carefully. Damien looked straight at Riley, and she saw something in his eyes that eased the panic in her chest. Complete trust. They're not, he said simply. I know Riley. She's not capable of anything like that. Riley felt her eyes sting. No one had ever believed in her that way, especially when the evidence seemed to be against her. The problem was never me. It was you underestimating me, she murmured, loud enough for everyone to hear. Damien almost smiled. Margaret, cancel all my meetings for today. I'm taking Riley and the kids somewhere far away from those reporters. Damien, you don't have to. I do need to. Your ex should have an official villain badge, he said, grabbing his car keys. Because she just declared war. As they left the office, Riley gently touched his arm. Thank you for believing in me. I'll always believe in you. The way he said it made her heart race. There was a promise hidden in those words, one that went far beyond the current situation. But as they stepped into the elevator, neither of them noticed Marcus speaking quietly on the phone. Yes, Miss Vega. He didn't take the bait. We'll need phase 2. On the other end, Veronica's laughter was cold as ice. Perfect. This time, we'll hit where it really hurts. Riley thought the worst was over. She had no idea Veronica was just getting started, and the next strike would land exactly where Damien was most vulnerable. His children. Riley never imagined that the final straw would be a photo of Noah and Emma leaving school with tear-streaked faces, splashed across the front page of every Miami newspaper with the headline, CEO's children suffer amid nanny scandal. Veronica had crossed the line, and Riley wasn't about to let 2 innocent kids pay for a war they didn't start. The mansion's hall was as silent as a mausoleum when she came down the stairs with her 2 suitcases. The light rain outside tapped softly against the windows, as if even the weather was mourning. Damien was waiting at the bottom of the staircase, still in his work suit, though his tie was crooked and his hair was a mess. Where do you think you're going? Away from here. Away from all of you. Riley, don't be ridiculous. It's just a photo. It's not just a photo. She burst out, letting her bags drop onto the marble floor. They were crying, Damien. Kids at school asked if I was a criminal. Damien closed his eyes, running his hands over his face. We'll fix this, Marcus said. Marcus is working for your ex. The silence that followed was deafening. Damien stared at her, as if she had just said the sky was green. How do you know that? Because I have eyes and ears. Because I noticed when he started asking questions that were too specific. And because someone in this house needs to have a little common sense. That's when Noah and Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, still in their school uniforms. Their faces were red, and Emma was clutching the teddy bear Riley had given her. "Riley?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Are you leaving?" Riley felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. She climbed a few steps to meet them at eye level. Sometimes adults have to make hard choices to protect the people they love. "But we love you," Noah cried, running down and throwing his arms around her. "If you leave, who's going to play on the beach with us? Who's going to make those funny pancakes?" Emma joined in, hugging Riley tightly. Riley looked at Damien over the children's heads. He stood there watching, his expression filled with raw pain she had never seen before. "Someone bring me a mojito, because that's the only way I'm getting through this," she said through tears, trying to keep her tone light, but her voice broke. The kids didn't laugh this time. They just held her tighter. "You're the most amazing kids I've ever met," Riley whispered, kissing their blonde heads. "And I'll always remember every laugh, every game, every moment we shared." "No, you won't," Emma sobbed. "You promised you'd never leave. Sometimes promises break, sweetheart, but love doesn't." Damien finally came down the stairs, his voice rougher than usual. "Riley, please. We can find a way to fix this." Riley stood up, still holding the children's hands. "Be honest, or lose me." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done living in the shadow of your wife's ghost. I'm done pretending that what's happening between us doesn't exist. And I'm done letting your ex destroy your family because of a forbidden love you're too afraid to admit." Damien said nothing. Riley waited. The children waited. Even the rain outside seemed to stop, as if the world itself wanted to hear his answer. But he stayed silent. "You at least owe me a goodbye mojito." Riley tried to smile, but the tears wouldn't stop. She picked up her suitcases and walked toward the door. With every step, she hoped Damien would call out, would say the words she needed to hear. Just as her hand touched the doorknob, Noah shouted, "Dad, do something! Don't let her go!" Riley froze, her hand still on the door. This was the moment. If Damien truly felt something for her, if there was any possible future between them, he had to say it now. "Riley." His voice was low, almost a whisper. She turned around, her heart pounding like a drum. What do you mean, Damien?" He looked at her, then at the kids, then down at the floor. "I need time." They were the wrong words. Riley nodded, as if she had been expecting that answer. "Time is the one thing we don't have." She opened the door and walked out into the rain. The last sound she heard was Emma crying out her name through her sobs. Damien stood in the empty hallway, listening to the sound of her car driving away. Noah and Emma clung to his legs, crying as if their world had just ended, and maybe it had. Margaret appeared from the kitchen, her eyes red. "Dinner's ready, Mr. Torres." "No one's eating tonight," he said, carrying the kids to the couch. For 2 hours, they sat together in silence, listening to the rain against the windows. The house felt hollow without Riley's laughter echoing through the halls. That was when Damien finally faced the truth he'd been denying for weeks. He hadn't just lost a nanny. He had lost the woman who brought his family back to life. He had lost the woman he loved. And for the first time since his wife's death, Damien Torres cried. Not out of grief, but out of regret. Because when you lose someone out of fear, that pain is worse than any tragedy. It's a pain you choose to feel. That night, alone in his room, he looked at the shirt Riley had worn to the kids' party, still hanging in the closet, and he finally understood what she meant when she said, "Be clear or lose me." But was it already too late to win back the love he'd let slip away in the rain? 3 days after Riley left their lives, Damien Torres was sitting on the floor of the dark living room with 2 children who refused to eat, talk, or leave their rooms. It was official. Miami's most successful millionaire CEO had no idea how to fix the broken hearts inside his own home. The house was drowned in silence. No Riley laughter in the halls, no smell of her pancakes in the kitchen, no soft humming while she played with the kids. It was as if life itself had been drained from the place. "Daddy," Emma whispered, curled up in his lap like a wounded kitten. "Why did you let Riley leave?" Damien closed his eyes. The question he'd avoided for 3 days had finally come, from the most innocent voice in the world. Sometimes adults make mistakes, princess. Big ones or small ones? Noah asked, lifting his head from his father's shoulder. Big ones, the size of a building. Emma shifted in his lap, looking straight into his eyes with that brutal honesty only children have. Did you like Riley? Damien's throat tightened. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I liked her more than that. Then why didn't you tell her? There it was, the question that had haunted him through 3 sleepless nights. Why hadn't he been able to say the 3 simplest words in the world when she asked for clarity? Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Noah asked, now fully sitting up. Afraid to love again and lose again. Afraid you two would hate me for replacing your mom. Afraid to be happy when I thought I didn't deserve to be. The kids were quiet, taking in his words. Damien went on, the confession pouring out like something that had been trapped in his chest for months. I took too long to say it, but I love Riley. It was the first time he'd said it out loud, and it felt like a 2-ton weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Emma clapped her hands, a smile lighting up her face for the first time in days. You love Riley. I knew it. And now what? Noah asked, always the practical one. She's gone, and you didn't go after her. Damien laughed softly at himself, a sound that was half sad, half relieved. She'd be teasing me right now, saying I'm an idiot for taking so long to see what was right in front of me. The kids laughed too, and for a moment, a bit of light returned to that dark room. Can I tell you a secret? Emma whispered, leaning close to his ear. Of course. I always wanted you to marry Riley. She made you smile for real. Damien felt his eyes sting. Noah joined in from the other side. And she made pancakes shaped like hearts. No one else does that. Losing her meant losing us too, Damien admitted, pulling them both into his arms. You two were happier when she was here. I was happier when she was here. Then go get her, Emma shouted, jumping up. Like in the movies. Run after her. It's not that simple, princess. I hurt her. I said the wrong things at the wrong time. Then say the right things now, Noah said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Damien looked at his children and saw something he hadn't seen in days. Hope in their eyes. And for the first time since Riley left, he felt that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. Do you think she'd forgive me? If you really apologize, yes, Emma said with the kind of absolute certainty only a 6-year-old can have. And if you tell her you love her in front of everyone, like the prince does with the princess, Noah added. Damien frowned. In front of everyone? Yeah, Dad, real love isn't something to be ashamed of. His mouth fell open. His 6-year-old son had just given him the most important life lesson he'd ever received. Real love isn't something to be ashamed of. Do you know where she is? Emma and Noah exchanged a conspiratorial smile. Margaret called her yesterday, Emma confessed. She's at her friend's apartment on Biscayne Boulevard. And she's really sad, Noah added. Margaret said she cries while watching romantic movies and eats ice cream straight from the container. Damien couldn't help but smile. It was so typical of Riley to turn sadness into a romantic movie cliché. What do you think I should do? First, take a shower. You smell bad, Emma said, making a face. Second, buy flowers. Lots of them, Noah continued. And third, tell everyone you love her. On TV, in the newspaper, everywhere. Damien stood up, feeling energy return to his body for the first time in 3 days. His kids were right. If he wanted Riley back, he had to earn it. Will you help me? Of course, they shouted together. But Daddy, Emma tugged at his shirt. If Riley comes back, will you stop being sad? Damien knelt down, holding her small face between his hands. If Riley comes back, sweetheart, I promise I'll never let fear speak louder than love again. Do you really promise? I do, and you know why? Why? Because you two taught me something. Family isn't about blood. It's about who makes your heart feel at home. And Riley has always made our hearts feel at home. That night, after putting the kids to bed, Damien called Margaret. Margaret, I need you to organize a press conference. Tomorrow morning. Mr. Torres, about what exactly? Damien smiled, looking at the picture of Riley and the kids on the beach that sat on his desk. About true love. And about how a millionaire CEO can be a complete fool when it comes to matters of the heart. Sir? Trust me, Margaret, tomorrow, all of Miami will know that Damien Torres is hopelessly in love with Riley Carter. And for the first time in his career, he didn't care what the board of directors would think. Because some things are more important than business, like winning back the woman you love. But would Riley be willing to listen after everything that happened? Damian Torres never imagined that declaring love in public could be more terrifying than closing a billion-dollar deal. But there he was, sweating in the ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel, as camera flashes burst around him like fireworks. The low murmur of Miami's press created a hum of anticipation that made his heart race. He had called the conference to clear Riley's name and declare his feelings, but he hadn't expected one particular guest in the front row. Veronica Vega, dressed in blood red and wearing a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Before we begin," Margaret whispered in his ear, "Miss Carter is on her way. I convinced her to come." Damian nodded, trying not to show how nervous he was. In the back of the room, he spotted Noah and Emma sitting with the temporary nanny, holding a hand-painted banner that read, "Dad loves Riley," in bright colors. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," he began, adjusting the microphone, "I called this conference to clarify some false information that's been circulating about my family." "Mr. Torres," a reporter called out, "is it true that the nanny, Riley Carter, tried to scam your family?" That question, a familiar voice cut through the air like a blade, should be directed to the person who actually orchestrated that smear campaign. Every head turned toward Veronica, who stood up gracefully from her seat in the front row. "Veronica," Damian warned, his voice low but firm. "This isn't your press conference." "But it should be," she said, flashing a poisonous smile at the cameras. "After all, I'm the one who knows the truth about this opportunist who wormed her way into your house." The room went dead silent. Damian could feel the electric tension as journalists adjusted their cameras, eager to capture every second of the unfolding drama. "Then enlighten us," Damian said, his voice dangerously calm. "Tell everyone your version of the truth." "Riley Carter researched your family, planned every move, and manipulated your children," Veronica said directly to the cameras. "She's an opportunist who saw a wealthy, widowed CEO and decided to take advantage of a vulnerable man." That's when Damian saw Riley walking in from the back of the hall. She was pale, but kept her head high. Her eyes met his through the crowd, and he felt as if someone had punched him in the stomach. "Interesting theory," Damian said, turning his attention to Veronica. "But let me tell you the real truth." He stood up and walked to the front of the makeshift stage. "Riley Carter isn't an opportunist. She's the woman who brought my family back to life after 2 years of grief. She's the one who made my children laugh again, the one who taught me it's possible to be happy without guilt." Veronica frowned, clearly not expecting that reaction. "Damian, you're being naive. And you," he said, pointing straight at her, "are being pathetic." The whole room froze. Camera flashes went off like a storm of light. "You call me distracted," Damian went on, his voice echoing through the room. "But you're the one who wasted years distracted by your own ego. Riley never tried to manipulate me. She challenged me. She made me want to be a better man. You have no idea what she's capable of." "Oh, I know exactly what she's capable of," Damian cut in. "She's capable of making heart-shaped pancakes for sad kids. She's capable of putting together a circus show when the clown cancels. She's capable of standing tall with dignity when she's unfairly attacked." Riley placed a hand over her chest, her eyes shining with restrained tears. "And most importantly," Damian said, looking straight at her, "she's capable of loving a broken family and making it whole again." "Damian, stop this performance." Veronica tried to interrupt, but he wasn't done. "This isn't a performance, Veronica. It's the truth. And since we're talking about truth," he turned fully to the cameras, "I love Riley Carter, and I'm not ashamed of it." The hall erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras clicked non-stop. And through all the chaos, Damian could only see Riley. She stood at the back of the hall, tears streaming down her face, but her smile lit up her entire expression. "I made the mistake of letting fear speak louder than love," Damian went on, his voice trembling. "I let the most amazing woman I've ever met walk out of my life because I didn't have the courage to admit I've been in love with her since the very first day." Noah and Emma jumped from their seats and ran to the stage, hugging their father's legs. "Daddy said he loves Riley," Emma shouted into the microphones. "Now she's coming back home." The crowd burst out laughing and applauding. Some reporters were visibly emotional, and even the camera operators smiled behind their lenses. Veronica, realizing she had completely lost control of the situation, tried one last move. "You'll regret this when you find out who she really is." "I already know exactly who she is," Damien said without even looking at her. "She's the woman I want by my side for the rest of my life. She's the mother my children chose. She's my future." Riley began walking down the center aisle, tears freely falling down her cheeks. When she reached the stage, Damien stepped down to meet her. "You know this is going to end up on TikTok, right?" she whispered, trying to sound playful even while crying. "Let it spread around the world, officer," he said, cupping her face in his hands. "As long as you forgive me for being a complete idiot." "Damien, I love you, Riley Carter. In front of God, the press of Miami, and especially in front of my kids, who always knew you were perfect for our family." Riley looked into his eyes and saw everything she needed to see. Real love, without fear, without shame, without hesitation. "I love you too," she whispered. The entire room erupted in applause. Veronica stormed out, clearly defeated, while reporters shouted questions about weddings and the family's future. But Damien could only hear one thing: Riley's laughter filling the hall, mixed with Noah and Emma's giggles. For the first time in his life, he had declared something more important than financial results. He had declared true love, and everyone had heard it. Now there was only one question left. When would Riley marry him? She really should have been suspicious when Damien insisted she meet him on the mansion's deck, just to talk at 7 in the evening. Especially after Noah and Emma had spent the whole day whispering and grinning like they were hiding the century's biggest secret. But after a week of reconciling and trying to get life back to normal, she had decided to believe in that family's innocence. Her mistake. The deck looked like something out of a romantic movie. Hundreds of floating candles formed a golden path to the railing, red rose petals shaped a heart on the floor, and the smell of the ocean mixed with jasmine. The warm night breeze made the flames dance like tiny, illuminated ballerinas. "Seriously, Damien?" Riley stopped at the door, crossing her arms. "This looks like a wedding proposal scene." "Funny you should say that." He appeared behind her, wearing jeans and a white shirt, no tie, more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "Please tell me you're not going to." Riley Carter. He knelt right there in the middle of the rose petals, pulling a blue Tiffany box from his pocket. "Oh my God," she brought her hands to her face. "You're really doing this?" 4 months ago, a woman came to my door looking for a job and ended up stealing my heart along with the piece in my house," he began, opening the box to reveal a diamond ring that shone like a star. "You taught me that loving someone isn't betraying the memory of those we've lost. It's honoring what they wanted for us, to be happy." Riley felt tears start to fall, but this time they were clean tears of pure happiness. "You made me want to wake up every day. You made me laugh for real. You made my children believe in family again." Damien continued, his voice breaking. "And more than that, you made me realize that true love isn't afraid to be seen, isn't ashamed to exist, doesn't need to hide." "Marry me, Riley, not because you take good care of my children or because they love you, although those are great reasons. Marry me because I can't imagine a future without you by my side." Riley looked at the ring, then at the man kneeling in the middle of the rose petals, then at the windows of the house where she could see Noah and Emma pressed to the glass, watching everything. "Somebody get me a mojito," she said, and Damien's heart stopped for a second, but this time a celebratory one. Damien burst out laughing, a sound of pure relief and joy. "Is that a yes? That's a huge yes, you idiot." He jumped up, slipped the ring onto her finger, and spun her in the air. The kids exploded in cheers inside the house, and Margaret appeared at the window clapping. "I won't make the same mistake again," he whispered as he set her down, cupping her face in his hands. "I won't let fear decide anything in our lives anymore." "You're actually cute when you're not being a millionaire CEO," Riley teased, admiring the ring on her finger. "Wait until you see me in an apron, making diamond-shaped pancakes." "You don't know how to make pancakes." "I'll learn. I've got the rest of my life to learn everything that makes you happy." Riley kissed him right there among the candles and petals, while Miami glittered in the background and the ocean sang its eternal song. "Can I ask for something?" she whispered against his lips. "Anything. No wedding with 1,000 guests and celebrity magazines. I want something simple, right here. Just us and the people who really matter. Done. But there's one condition." "What?" "Emma will be the flower girl and choose her own dress. Noah will be the ring bearer, and Margaret will bake the cake 'cause I don't trust anyone else not to burn the house down." Riley laughed, imagining the lovely chaos it would be. "And your family? Your parents? Siblings?" Damien grew serious for a moment. "My family is the three of you. It always has been. I just took a while to realize it." Noah and Emma came running onto the deck like two little hurricanes. "Riley is going to be our real mom," Emma shouted, throwing herself into Riley's arms, "and we're going to have a complete family." Noah joined the group hug. "You two knew about this the whole time, didn't you, little rascals?" Riley asked, ruffling their hair. "It was our idea," Emma confessed proudly. "We told Dad he had to ask you to marry him before some other man did." "What other man?" "The pizza delivery guy always smiles at Riley," Noah explained seriously. "And the supermarket man asks if she's single." Riley burst out laughing. "Oh, you two are impossible. We're an impossible family," Damien corrected, kissing her forehead. "And perfect just the way we are." As they watched the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, Riley felt she was finally where she belonged. She wasn't the nanny anymore. She wasn't the outsider anymore. She was part of that crazy, perfect family. "When do you want to get married?" Damien asked. "Would tomorrow be too soon? For me, it would be perfect." "Then let's do something that will get people talking in Miami," Riley said with a playful smile. "Let's get married on the beach at sunset with our feet in the sand and mojitos for all the guests." "Including the kids?" "Virgin mojitos for the underage, of course." Damien laughed, pulling her closer. "Are you sure you want to marry a millionaire CEO who's a workaholic with 2 kids and a complicated past?" "I'm sure I want to marry Damien Torres. The man who burns pancakes, plays the piano when he's nervous, loves his kids more than anything, and had the courage to declare his love in front of all of Miami's press." "And are you sure you want to be the stepmother of 2 little 6-year-old troublemakers?" Riley looked at Noah and Emma, who were having a rose-petal war. "I'm sure I want to be the mom of those 2 impossible angels." And in that moment, with the ring shining on her finger, surrounded by the family she had chosen, and who had chosen her back, Riley Carter finally understood what it meant to be home. There was only one question left. Could she make it to the altar without tripping? Knowing Riley, probably not. But Damien would be there to catch her, just as he had been since that first day when she'd asked for a mojito to survive the interview. Some love stories begin with a kiss. Theirs began with laughter, grew with courage, and would be sealed with a promise that true love always finds a way to win. Riley should have guessed that tripping over her own wedding dress would be the grand finale of a love story that began with a mojito order and was about to end with another. But there she was, 3 weeks after the proposal, wobbling on the sand in front of the Torres mansion while 50 guests held their breath. The setting was too perfect for any kind of stumble. The private beach turned into a celestial altar, white flower arches framing Miami's golden sunset. The scent of jasmine and roses mixed with the salty breeze, while the waves played a soft, romantic melody in the background. Damien, flawless in a white suit with no tie, waited at the altar with a smile too big for his face. Noah, wearing a miniature tuxedo, held the rings as if they were the world's greatest treasure. Emma, in a pink dress she had chosen herself, with enough ruffles for a Disney princess, scattered petals with the focus of an artist. "Breathe, Riley," Margaret whispered beside her, serving as maid of honor. "It's just a straight walk." A straight walk on soft sand. "In high heels, wearing a long dress," Riley murmured back. What could possibly go wrong? That was exactly when she stepped on the hem of her own gown. The world seemed to move in slow motion. Riley started to fall forward, her arms flailing like a bird trying to fly. The guests let out a collective gasp. Damien took a step forward, ready to run, but Riley caught herself at the last second, turning the stumble into a theatrical bow. "Someone get me a mojito," she shouted to the crowd. "Because it's official. I have 0 coordination." The entire beach burst into laughter. Even the minister laughed, and he was known for being as serious as a funeral. "That's my bride," Damien shouted back, starting to applaud. Riley reached the altar laughing, her face flushed with embarrassment and joy. "If I fall again, you'll have to carry me for the rest of your life," she whispered to Damien. "That's the plan," he replied, taking her hands. The minister cleared his throat, trying to restore some solemnity. "Dear family and friends, we are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Damien Torres and Riley Carter in a ceremony that, I can safely say, will be unforgettable." Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. "But before the traditional vows," Damien interrupted, "I'd like to make an announcement." Riley frowned. They hadn't planned any announcements. "As many of you know, I lost my first wife, Sarah, 2 years ago. She was an amazing woman who always dreamed of helping families who went through what we did." His voice faltered for a second, but he kept going. "So today, I'm announcing the creation of the Sarah and Riley Torres Foundation, dedicated to supporting families who've lost a parent and children who need second chances at love." Riley placed her free hand over her chest, her eyes filling with tears. "Because I've learned that honoring the past doesn't mean being trapped in it. It means building a future that would make those we lost proud." The guests began to applaud spontaneously. Noah and Emma ran to hug their father and stepmother, unable to wait for the end of the ceremony. "This family is my greatest investment," Damien said, hugging the kids. "And now, officially, Riley is part of it." "Can we skip to the kissing part?" Emma asked loudly, making everyone laugh again. "I think so," the pastor agreed with a smile. "By the power vested in me by the state of Florida, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Damien pulled Riley close, his hands gently holding her face. "Ready for a lifetime of adventures? With you, ready for anything." The kiss was long and full of emotion, earning cheers from the crowd. When they finally pulled apart, Riley noticed even the toughest guests were wiping away tears. "All right," she called out to the crowd. "Someone get the mojitos, because this party is just getting started." The DJ began playing Latin music, and the beach turned into an impromptu dance floor. Margaret appeared with a tray of mojitos, non-alcoholic for the kids, and even the pastor joined in. During their first dance, Riley tripped over her own feet twice, but Damien caught her each time, spinning her around as if it had all been planned. "Are you sure you want to stay married to me?" she asked as they danced. "I'm a public safety hazard." "That's exactly why. Life with you will never be boring." "And are you sure you want to share your kids with me?" Damien looked over at Noah and Emma, who were teaching Margaret how to do the floss dance in the sand. "Riley, you're not sharing them with me. You're completing our family." When the music shifted to something livelier, the kids joined them on the dance floor. It was beautiful chaos. Emma spinning until she was dizzy, Noah trying to copy his father's moves, and Riley laughing so hard she could barely stand. "Family photo," the photographer shouted, trying to gather them together. But just as the flash went off, Emma tripped. Noah tried to catch her. Damien tried to catch both of them, and Riley tried to catch Damien. The result: everyone landed in the sand in a pile of laughter and white tulle. "Perfect," the photographer said proudly. "That's the one for the wall." As the night went on, and the guests drifted away, the new Torres family stayed on the beach, watching the stars appear in the dark sky. "Riley," Noah said, curled up in her lap, "are you our mom forever now? Forever and one more day, sweetheart?" "And are we all going to live together?" Emma asked, playing with her stepmother's veil. "In the same house, the same family, with lots of love and lots of burnt pancakes," Damien confirmed. "And plenty of mojitos?" Riley added, making everyone laugh. As the waves gently rolled onto the shore and Miami sparkled in the distance, Riley Carter Torres, she was still getting used to the name, realized she had finally found her place in the world. It wasn't perfect. Damien was still a workaholic, the kids still made messes, and she still tripped over her own feet. But it was theirs. It was real. It was true love built on laughter, tears, courage, and second chances. And if anyone asked what the secret was to winning a millionaire CEO's heart, she'd say, sometimes all it takes is asking for a mojito at the right moment and having the courage to stay when things get complicated. Because the best love stories don't start with once upon a time. They start with, "Excuse me." Is there anything to drink in this house? And they lived happily ever after, with plenty of humor, plenty of love, and at least one mojito a day. And that's how the story ends, of a woman who ordered a mojito just to survive a job interview and ended up gaining an entire family. Because sometimes, love shows up when we least expect it, disguised as chaos, flavored with humor, and served cold, like the perfect drink on a Miami afternoon. Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale of 0 to 10, what would you rate this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to receive more touching stories like this one. See you next time.